Welcome to the ultimate Bitcoin iceberg. We'll go over some basics, then start going a little deeper and a little deeper and deeper still, and eventually get to that dark water. Bitcoin is complicated, and complicated things are hard to get into because we like our information in little short TikTok videos. Feel free to skip ahead if you get bored. I put some timestamps in, but to be honest, I'm really trying to get to the monetization milestone, so if you could, I would appreciate it if you actually give me those valuable watch minutes. Where else would you rather be than right here talking Bitcoin? Market price. The most visible thing about Bitcoin. You can't escape it. The market price is unfortunately what most people want to talk about because no matter who you are, what your age or education is, everyone can have an opinion about the price of something. It's low, it's high. I think it's going to do this, I think it's going to do that. See, 6 months ago, I guessed this, and I was right. I'm smart. I can tell the future. When the reality is no human can predict the market. But it's exciting to fantasize about being rich, especially when you see low prices in the past and you think, man, if only I bought some, I'd make money and I wouldn't have to do any work. You know, there's a lot of people out there that fantasize about being successful, but they can't handle minor confrontation at work. Like, what do you think business owners, captains of industry deal with all day? They have to deal with people. They have to deal with confrontations. But Bitcoin is a nice fantasy that maybe if only I could go back in time, it's an easy way to make money. Also, conversely, when the price drops, it provides ammunition for critics who get to say, see, I told you, it's going to zero. Here we go. But believe it or not, if you get really into this stuff, the price can actually become boring and become one of the least interesting things about Bitcoin. Orange. The Bitcoin logo we know today was not the original. The original had this gold color scheme, which isn't bad. But in 2010, an individual named BitBoy, not BitBoy Crypto, put out this amazing image with the iconic orange color. Looks awesome. According to logodesign.org, orange is symbolic of creativity, success, joy, safety, and change, while also evoking freedom, ambition, and friendship. I don't know if that's accurate, but either way, it's good stuff. Decentralized. If you look up Bitcoin on Wikipedia, the first sentence reads, Bitcoin is a decentralized cryptocurrency. This word, decentralized, is so important to understand. You can have a cryptocurrency that is centralized, you know, one guy running something on his one computer. Just as a made-up example, let's call it Elon Musk coin. If Elon Musk coin is just running on this one guy's computer, you have to really trust this guy. Maybe he's your friend, maybe he's your best friend, and you know he wouldn't screw you over. Okay. But it's not something the world can use. That is not world money. In contrast, Bitcoin is decentralized, meaning the software is run on many, many computers all around the world. It's not just one guy, one building, one company, one country, one alliance between countries. Bitcoin is spread on different computers across the entire world. When you look at all these other so-called cryptocurrencies, these competitors to Bitcoin, you realize they all fall short in this regard. They all have fewer nodes, fewer users. If you don't believe me, you can look up some of these node numbers yourself, but if you accept this truth, then you really are starting to take the orange pill that Bitcoin really is something special. And decentralization is its defense from attack. Peer-to-peer. Bitcoin is a peer-to-peer money, which is exactly what it sounds like. Might not sound noteworthy, but when you consider the modern world, the ability to send money directly, person to person, is not just noteworthy, it's world-changing. Your debit or credit card is the furthest thing from peer-to-peer. When you use a card or any app on your phone to pay for something, what you're really doing is asking permission from some company to use your money. Now, if you're in a first world country, you pay your taxes, don't have any problematic behavior, then yes, credit cards, Venmo, Cash App are all user-friendly. But life is not so simple. Not everyone is lucky enough to have governments that are nice. And just on principle, we shouldn't be giving the authority to live, authority to buy food, literally permission to live or die, to these for-profit companies. If you have to ask permission, can you even call it your money? You can have critiques of Bitcoin, but I would love to hear someone who critiques the concept or the promise of peer-to-peer money. That is absolutely worth fighting for. 21 million. Gotta be included in any description or elevator pitch for Bitcoin. The number of Bitcoin that can ever be is 21 million. Now, a skeptical person might say, how do we really know that? Well, it's because everyone running the Bitcoin software is constantly checking this. If any extra are made, if anyone tries to do anything sketchy, then that person, that version of Bitcoin is rejected by the community. It's like if you change the rules of chess, even something minor, like putting one more pawn on each side of the board, okay? You've changed chess. Whatever that is not chess. You can make that change and maybe even convince someone else to play that way, but it's not chess. You're playing something else. All Bitcoin movement is checked to see if you're playing by the rules. And that cap of 21 million is a core rule. The concept of something actually being scarce should really blow your mind, as almost everything in our lives is not scarce. It's constantly rubbed in our face that the US dollar is monopoly money. They can print it at will. They send billions to this country, billions to that country. Politicians can pick and choose what debts to pay and which to forgive, It's enough to make you want to puke. And there are far worse examples if you live in smaller countries. It sounds like something from a cartoon, but real people have had to use wheelbarrows to carry massive amounts of cash to buy simple items just because their currency became worthless due to out-of-control money printing. All of the arguments for gold, for a hard money policy, apply to Bitcoin. And, real quick, one more thing. A skeptic might say, well, it's scarce. What if 20 million Bitcoin get lost? What if we run out of Bitcoin? Well, unlike gold, Bitcoin can be broken into tiny pieces very easily and can still be traded online. So even if there was just one Bitcoin left on Earth, you can still have all these little pieces of it to do trade with. Exchanges. If you've looked at or actually bought Bitcoin on an exchange, you've really taken that next step from just being aware of Bitcoin to getting some skin in the game. It's taking that leap, exchanging money issued by your government for this new digital money. In a perfect world where everyone had Bitcoin, exchanges may not need to exist because everyone would already be trading in Bitcoin. Trash collectors, doctors, shoe salesmen, sushi chefs, they would all accept Bitcoin directly. But we're not at that point yet. The world, by and large, does not accept Bitcoin as payment. Same issues are there if you're a business owner trying to accept it. We're still in the early stages. So exchanges are important businesses and a simple way to get some Bitcoin. Mining. Sometimes referred to as computers solving a very complicated math problem to create more Bitcoin, but it's a little misleading because it's not some crazy, elaborate math problem. They are guessing a particular number, and the winner gets to update the network and is rewarded with some new Bitcoin. Those rooms full of computers are just guessing numbers like 2008, 45, 1,000,001. Sounds easy, but it involves a very, very big number. So even with some serious computer power, it takes the world roughly 10 minutes to mine each new block in the blockchain. Can sound wasteful, but aside from making new Bitcoin, aside from validating transactions, miners are a defense network. There is no government, there is no law or army protecting Bitcoin. Bitcoin has to protect itself. That energy acts as a wall to keep someone from messing with the network. An attacker would need to outperform all the miners, which becomes harder and harder to do as the usage goes up. At one point, you could mine Bitcoin with a little USB device, but as you can imagine, the competition for new Bitcoin has gone up dramatically. And now, not only do you need serious computer equipment that specializes specifically in mining to be competitive, you also will likely have to join a pool. That is a group of other miners that all work together to split profits. It's very rare now for individuals to mine on their own. Wheels might be spinning in your head. I wonder if there's a way to cheat this. That's a very normal thought to have. You are not alone. Since the beginning, people have tried to game this system to either create more Bitcoin, maybe block someone, destroy the system, and ultimately, they all come back to the same conclusion. If you're going to spend energy on Bitcoin, if you're going to mine, the only logical thing to do is to follow the rules and take the Bitcoin awarded. Self-custody. Taking your Bitcoin off of an exchange and taking ownership of it is the next big step. Yes, it's more work, it's more to think about, but that's really what this is all about. If you want to trust somebody else with your money, then you may as well stick to traditional banking. Self-custody using software wallets or a hardware wallet, protecting a seed phrase, puts the responsibility on you to keep it safe, to take some responsibility for yourself, to be a man. There's a lot of advice and guides out there on how to do this, but it's really a never-ending topic. There could be an entire iceberg just talking about self-custody. Just like protecting your home or protecting your physical body from, getting stabbed. What would actually be best is you try to avoid getting in that situation altogether in the first place. So if you own Bitcoin, really, what you should be doing in addition to protecting it is to shut up about it. If you're at work hanging around the water bubbler and Bitcoin gets brought up, the best thing to do is just don't get into it. Give the most normie take impossible. Something like, man, I wish I got in early. I'd be so rich. It's probably going to collapse one day, though. You know, something like that. Be dumb. Because if the price goes where we think it's going to go, self-custody is going to be mandatory. Satoshi Nakamoto, the mysterious creator of Bitcoin. Really, in my opinion, if you start trying to answer this question, there is no turning back. If you start this journey, you will be all in on Bitcoin. It's just an incredible story of a man who wrote the Bitcoin white paper, the original code, and created a forum, the Bitcoin Talk Forum, all while staying anonymous. And it was really that community building, that reaching out to people, the facilitating conversation, that is what got Bitcoin to take off. You can't just dump something online and expect people to get it. You have to show them. There are a few theories out there on who Satoshi is, and digging into these weird, interesting candidates will teach you about cybersecurity, why were people working on digital money in the first place, what problems existed with digital money in the past, what does it mean for society if there is a money that can't be taxed. Those questions and their answers should cause a slight burning sensation somewhere in your body. Bitcoin sign guy. In 2017, Janet Yellen, who was then the head of the Central Bank of the United States, was testifying before Congress on TV. And this young man, Christian Langelis, photobombed the event with a sign saying, "Buy Bitcoin." Just a simple, powerful stunt, still worth talking about. Like Bitcoin, it was nonviolent, but at the same time, it's just the biggest F you. What buy Bitcoin really means is reject the central bank. Buy Bitcoin means reject your government. I'm sure Janet Yellen is a nice lady, but she represents the class of people that just jump between banking and government, jump from government back into the private sector. You know, they all work together. They all collude with your money. Not good for humanity. Buy Bitcoin indeed. Dorian Nakamoto, an Asian American man living in Temple City, California, named Dorian Satoshi Nakamoto. When reporters were searching for who created Bitcoin using the name Satoshi Nakamoto, Dorian was identified and put on blast in a Newsweek article from 2014. He made the unfortunate mistake when asked about his work that he had no comment, which only made things worse for him. He's not Satoshi Nakamoto, but the story serves as a good example of just how bad, quote-unquote, mainstream, reputable journalism can be. But as Satoshi remains unknown, Dorian's face is frequently used as a stand-in to reference Satoshi. Probably doesn't feel good to get labeled something you're not, but at least it's something positive. People like Satoshi, better than being labeled a war criminal or something. Running Bitcoin. The OG Bitcoin tweet. Really, one of the first examples of the word Bitcoin on social media. Hal Finney was way ahead of the curve, and frequently in the running as a candidate to actually be Satoshi. He was the first to receive a Bitcoin transaction when Satoshi sent him 10 coins, and much of the early code cleanup was done under his watch. I don't believe Hal was Satoshi, but if that's what people want to believe, then good, because he's really a great man and a great early Bitcoiner. Hal passed away 10 years ago, so he never really got to see Bitcoin of today, but his wife has organized a few running events in his name, so you too can run Bitcoin. The Genesis block, the first Bitcoin block in the blockchain, the beginning of it all, mined by Satoshi himself. Interesting block, not just because it's the first one. Obviously, since no block preceded it, it wasn't doing the usual check on the blocks before, but making it different was text found inside, put there by Satoshi. Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks. This was the actual headline from the January 3rd, 2009 edition of the Times newspaper. And it's worth pointing out that this is from the print version. The online edition of this story actually had different wording. So for anyone Satoshi hunting, something to keep in mind. This text keeps you grounded about what this is all about. Because it's part of the first block, we are forced to remember. Forks. If you download the Bitcoin code on your computer and make any changes to it, congratulations, you have forked Bitcoin. You have started a new project with new rules, and you can name it whatever you want. To get into Bitcoin forks is really like getting into politics. People have different ideas on what direction Bitcoin should go. You may even think your ideas are an improvement and that you have made Bitcoin better, but the trick is getting other people to agree and use your new code. There is no way to compel Bitcoin users all around the world to quote-unquote upgrade. So any changes that happen must be well vetted and warranted. I'm not saying Bitcoin has never upgraded, but it's an overall rare event because if the Bitcoin blockchain has a hard fork where there are two competing paths to follow, you open the door for controversy, for conflict, and potentially splitting the community. Some cryptocurrencies fork all the time, and all of the nodes upgrade their software. Congratulations. They can do that because there's less at stake. In the big picture, no one cares about those projects. No one is using them. A government is not trying to attack it. No one is motivated to invest energy into them like they do Bitcoin. Bitcoin does not have that privilege. There are a lot of eyes on Bitcoin. There's a lot of money in Bitcoin. So what we have seen in development is a conservative approach. Changes happen slowly because getting consensus from people all around the world is hard. And the truth is, it should be like that. It shouldn't be easy to change Bitcoin because this is supposed to be hard money. It's supposed to be resilient to attack. Pizza purchase. Early Bitcoin user Laszlo posted on the Bitcoin Talk forums that he was interested in buying pizza with Bitcoin. This was May 18th, 2010, and there was no response. It actually took multiple requests before somebody finally said yes, and 2 pizzas were purchased from Papa John's Pizza for 20,000 Bitcoin. Now, usually the angle of this story involves people saying, wow, what an idiot. 20,000 Bitcoin wasted. But Laszlo played an important role, as this event marks the first time Bitcoin was used to purchase something tangible. And what it really did was finally put a price on Bitcoin. Now, Bitcoin Exchange did exist. I don't really know what the official market price was, a fraction of a penny or something, but this Papa John pizza purchase marked a historic turning point. Now, miners were not just hobbyists. They had real incentive, real motivation to mine. Bitcoin could be used for goods, and we were off. mining increased, users increased, price increased, and while its market price has had ups and downs since, the ups have been astronomical compared to the downs. I believe this wooden plaque is posted up at that Papa John's in Jacksonville, Florida by some local Bitcoiners. Anyone looking to do a Bitcoin road trip has to stop by and pay respect to the place that started it all, the Papa John's pizza store. Hodlnut is a Bitcoin personality who ended up getting sued and entering into this six-figure legal battle, all because he called out an Australian man for pretending to be Satoshi. You know, sometimes people get lawyers involved to bully people, and it was disgusting to see a Twitter account get sued and have Hodlnut's real-world identity and his business get aired out and compromised, really just for defending Bitcoin's honor. But the community responded, and tons of people adopted the name Hodlnut and the cat picture, basically flooding Twitter, this was pre-X, with a bunch of Hodlnuts, and it really became an I am Spartacus moment. An identity is being targeted, and brave individuals stand up all around Hodlnut and say, oh yeah, that's me. I'm Hodlnut. I think we've all had a fantasy at some time standing up and saying I'm Spartacus. And in a small way, we got to see Bitcoiners do that. Good stuff. Blockstream Satellite. Blockstream is a company that offers a few different services trying to make it easier to use Bitcoin. They have a wallet, a sidechain service, hats, but one product that is worth paying attention to is their satellite kit. You can use this receiver to connect to the Bitcoin network and opt out of the traditional infrastructure in place for the internet. And it's just another step in this direction of Bitcoin being its own living, breathing thing. Now, there's still a hang-up with the satellite. I believe Blockstream at this point basically rents an existing satellite. Space is not lawless. There are a lot of things that would need to happen for Blockstream, for Bitcoin, to truly separate, but this is really cool. This is the way. El Salvador. In 2021, El Salvador became the first country to go Bitcoin, to officially recognize Bitcoin as money, as legal tender. For any critiques you have about their dictator, it's an exciting event for Bitcoin. Some OG cypherpunks have been seen down there consulting the government. I mean, this is how we win. It starts with a small country, a bad boy country, and when they have success, then the copycats come in and it ripples around the world. I love America, okay, but I know that forcing these smaller countries to use the dollar might be good for us, but it's not good for them. The world needs a neutral world currency. And if your country can't get its act together, it probably feels bad to have to pick the dollar or the euro or the yuan to do trade in. It can be a little difficult to get good information on actual Bitcoin adoption in El Salvador. As you know, their media wants to make themselves look good, but regardless of how many citizens actually use it, having a government take this position to treat it as money has been stunning. And if they have any success down there, expect some hit pieces to start coming. That's how you're going to know things are going well for El Salvador, when the legacy media starts going after them. Bitcoin is absolutely a threat to existing power structures. If and when Bitcoin prices reach all-time highs, El Salvador will enrich themselves, and other countries might be forced to ask themselves the question, why aren't we doing this? Can we afford to not do this? The financial war, hopefully not a hot war, but the financial war is coming. And it's going to be between countries that adopt Bitcoin and countries that don't. I suspect El Salvador to be the center point of major foreign policy. Physical Bitcoins. You can still buy physical Bitcoins today, but the sweet spot for physical Bitcoin was really 2012 to 2014. The Bitcoin community was growing, more people were getting involved, but the market prices were more reasonable, and more importantly, it wasn't under the microscope of Big Brother. So there was a period of time where people got away with basically being money transmitters and sold physical Bitcoin actually loaded with Bitcoin from the blockchain. Many were ornamental, just decorative coins showcasing Bitcoin art, but there are some real interesting ones using precious metals, gold and silver, and like I said, using a QR code on the back to actually hold Bitcoin on them. Made it possible to do physical trading in the physical world. But as the price increased, all of a sudden these 1 BTC coins quickly became ridiculous. And even 0.5 or 0.1 Bitcoin coins became too overpowered to use or carry around. I love this stuff, and if you're a collector, getting physical Bitcoin is just so much more legit than some other Bitcoin physical media out there. Like Bitcoin Magazine, when I look at these prices, they try to sell old editions. It's ridiculous. Way too much for that trash. WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks publishes classified documents with proponents giving them credit for journalism and detractors saying they cause security risks for the world. Not so surprising overlap between WikiLeaks and Bitcoin. In a big picture way, right, they use a decentralized technology to circumvent a traditional system. But there's more direct connection, as WikiLeaks started up just about the same years as Bitcoin. When WikiLeaks was getting major attention in the US and PayPal and the banks shut off their banking, Bitcoin was there staring them in the face as an alternative, ready to go as a means for WikiLeaks to get money. Satoshi did not seem thrilled with this, as there's a famous quote from him expressing concern that Bitcoin shouldn't be associated with WikiLeaks. It's too dangerous. It wasn't the last thing Satoshi ever said, but it was close to it. Satoshi probably knew about this time that once you start poking the bear, or as he said it, the hornet's nest, it can get real bad real fast. It took a few years, but they got Julian Assange, and it serves as a reminder that if you put your neck out there, it can be taken. Cypherpunks. In the 90s, a small group of computer professionals began meeting in person in California because they recognized a problem. The rise of computers was bringing about a new age of information sharing and human advancement, but it was also bringing surveillance and record keeping that was really unprecedented and kind of insidious. Remember that back in the day, people had to use a phone book to find you, and you could pretty easily make a request to get your name out of there. Flash forward to today, and every website is asking for email, phone number, browser history, Wi-Fi connections, and literally your geolocation. It's just insane. But these individuals who became known as cypherpunks knew that computers could be used to liberate people, not just document and control them. And it's probably too far to label them as dark web hackers, although they certainly were not afraid to engage in some civil disobedience and get their hands dirty. But it was more abstract, more of an idea than an organization. Eventually, the meetings evolved into thousands of people communicating online on a now legendary cypherpunk mailing list. And it was these exchanges, these chat rooms, that lead to Bitcoin. It's not clear if Satoshi was one of these posters, but at the very least, they were lurking on there, as it was the cypherpunk mailing list that Satoshi first shared the white paper for Bitcoin. Like a lot of message boards, not all of the conversations happening on there were groundbreaking, but it was a window into the secret war going on with computers between the powers that be and the common man. As one cypherpunk said, privacy is necessary for an open society in the electronic age. We cannot expect governments, corporations, or other large, faceless organizations to grant us privacy. We must defend our own privacy if we expect to have any. That is as true today as it was 30 years ago, and Bitcoin is the clearest example of separating money from the state. U.S. Patent 201-000-42841. A journalist was Satoshi hunting in 2011, and going off the premise that people tend to repeat themselves, looked at the Bitcoin white paper and punched unique sentences from it into Google. When he tried the phrase computationally impractical to reverse, it produced only 26 results, and most of them were referencing Bitcoin. But there was one interesting match towards the end: an American patent application for a type of encrypted messages that was filed on August 15th, 2008, 3 days before Bitcoin.org was registered. I don't know what that means, but it's not nothing. There is some connection, even if not direct. There was some connection there between that and Bitcoin. Gavin's CIA presentation. Gavin Andresen was an early user of Bitcoin, an early developer, and took an active role in leadership, even giving away Bitcoin to those interested as means to get people on board. Gavin stated that he was invited by the CIA to give a presentation on Bitcoin, and in June of 2011 he did just that. The slides from his PowerPoint presentation are available to look at, but we really don't know all that was discussed that day. When Satoshi disappeared, Gavin then took on an even larger leadership role, which was odd, as the project is supposed to be open source. Even stranger, Gavin publicly stated belief that Craig Wright was Satoshi. When Craig was unable to offer any public proof, Gavin had to walk back his comments, but the damage to his credibility was already done. Despite being a historic early adopter that should be hailed as a hero in Bitcoin history, Gavin is quiet these days, with his behavior being a small footnote. What's the deal with Gavin? What was his role is something we may never know. Luckily for Bitcoin, unlike other centralized projects, a charismatic leader is not able to just take it over. Crypto note. The Bitcoin white paper and origin story are covered extensively, but a deep cut you may be less familiar with is the story of Crypto Note. This was another white paper, again released by an individual under a pseudonym. This time it was Nicholas von Saberhagen. Its aim was to address problems with Bitcoin, really the lack of privacy on-chain. You know, Bitcoin is not perfect, and the fact that the entire world can see Bitcoin moving around is not ideal. So CryptoNote produced the altcoin Monero, which, I say this jokingly, but it's true. It's the bad boy of crypto. It's spoken about in hushed terms. Privacy is paramount. Bitcoin has been able to market itself to businesses and governments by kind of bringing them along, saying, you'll be okay, you can still keep the status quo, this is just a new shiny invention. In reality, Bitcoin is more like a Trojan horse that will flip those traditional things upside down. But, Bitcoin can play the game, trick people into thinking blockchains are innovative. Monero, in contrast, is aggressive in its desire, its demand to be private. And while I don't think anything is better than Bitcoin, it is worth paying attention to what development is going on in the space. Monero is able to upgrade on a regular basis because the community is smaller. There are considerably less stakes. You'll see a lot of darknet markets accept Monero, but they almost always want Bitcoin too. Interesting to note that Belle Delphine accepts Monero. No further comment. Variety Jones. The Silk Road was an online marketplace using Bitcoin, with the majority of sales being illegal drugs. Its rise and fall and the story of Ross Ulbricht going to jail is a complicated, frustrating story. It brought a lot of news attention to Bitcoin and, unfortunately, a lot of bad press, as it became an example of Bitcoin being used to break the law and hurt people. Ross Ulbricht was charged not just with running the illegal site, but also trying to hire a hitman. So, can't be doing that. But the chat logs are all out there if interested in reading. The chats that have always piqued my attention were between Ross and an individual named Variety Jones, who gave counsel and advice to him, acting as a mentor. The direction of the website and the whole Hitman for Hire plot all went through Variety Jones. They did arrest a Canadian man living in Thailand that is supposed to be Variety Jones, but if you want to schizo out, you can go down the rabbit hole and question whether that is actually him. There's a lot of confusion on who was blackmailing who. Was the hitman real? I mean, you can question if Ross is even Dread Pirate Roberts. Variety Jones came up with that name, with the idea being that the identity can be passed around from person to person. There's just more to Silk Road than we know. Lots of money involved, lots of government actors, lots of scammers, lots of dark figures, so of course there's going to be some deception going on. And anytime you have a figure like Variety Jones working behind the scenes, it's fun to think about. Dragon's Tale. You may be familiar with the online game A Tale in the Desert. Maybe not, but it's a MMO online world that has people work together in an Egyptian setting to solve puzzles and socialize. But a precursor to this was Dragon's Tale. Shared some similarities, made by the same guy, but used Bitcoin as in-game currency, and had all these weird little games where you could bet your Bitcoin and possibly win more. It was gambling, but it was more than just gambling. Just a year after Bitcoin's release, a game had popped up that allowed people to get together and use it. All of these individuals, by definition, were early adopters of Bitcoin, and I'm sure they all have unique and interesting stories. The media likes to portray the dark web as this cursed, evil environment, when the reality is this is what goes on. This is a better representation. Bald guys betting on how many coconuts will fall from a tree in an empty, vast digital landscape. But make no mistake, I'm sure not all of these people were saints. The first wave of Bitcoin adopters were the cypherpunks, the computer geeks with a righteousness to change the world with digital money. The second wave were the consumers, the people looking to buy things anonymously. What do you think they wanted it for? They wanted it to evade law enforcement. They were gamblers, they were drug addicts, they were worse than that. Whenever you hear somebody from 2011 try to explain why they got into Bitcoin and they kind of hand wave the question away, it's okay to be a little suspicious of them. Citadels. In 2013, an individual posted to the Bitcoin Reddit that they were from the future. And the future they described was very dark. It said that the world had basically crumbled due to governments being unable to collect tax, and that Bitcoin mining was a massive waste. But what really caught people's attention was it said that early Bitcoin adopters were now the new elites, living in large gated castles called Bitcoin citadels. This had the opposite effect of the author's intent, and instead of scaring people, it captured imagination. Now, do I really think this user posted from the future? I don't know. Who can say? They made some price predictions that were all wrong, but it's like the butterfly effect. You go back in time, and what ends up happening is that you inadvertently alter the future. Either way, the concept of a gated, enclosed community for Bitcoiners is so cool, and dare I say, based, that it could become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Someone joking about it could have turned it into a reality. One day, we may just get there. Alcor. Alcor Life Extension is a fairly small company out of Arizona that offers to freeze your body, or if you want, just your head, indefinitely until science finds a way to bring you back to life in the future. Why this is Bitcoin related is because, strangely, a number of early Bitcoin adopters and cypherpunks have been attached to this organization. So even though it sounds like fake science, the fact that these critical thinkers put money and their literal life in this company's hands is probably worth paying attention to. Time travel, dimension travel, uploading your consciousness to a computer, it's all on the table with this company. Humanity has always longed for eternal life, but only recently has it stopped sounding like science fiction. Bogdanovs. I mean, just look at them. If you want the boring answer, it's that they are twins involved in showbiz from France who were addicted to plastic surgery. But the Bitcoin community has had a fascination with them as they wrote these insane academic papers about the origins of the universe, and just an overall gut feeling that if the Illuminati ruling class exists, these freaks are part of it. If anyone was able to make a phone call to crash markets worldwide, if anyone was eating babies, if anyone knew the truth about UFOs, it would be these guys. Sadly, they both passed away in the same week, apparently due to COVID, but I like to think they just ascended to the next plane. Jekyll Island. In 1910, a secret meeting of powerful men took place on this island off the coast of Georgia in the United States. They took a private train and used only their first name to keep transportation staff from knowing who they actually were. It was at this meeting that they created the Federal Reserve, the central bank of America. So this small island already has some dark energy, but when I contributed to a developer fundraiser, I received a package with a return label on this island. Very, very strange. So I think there are some Bitcoin OGs that may have some involvement there. Tourist information is pretty scarce, but I mean, just look at this image. Doesn't it give off a vibe that something's going on there? I mean, listen, if the elites can have Little St. James, maybe Bitcoiners can have their own island without, the bad stuff. Interesting place. Thanks for sticking around for some Bitcoin talk. If you think anything else should be mentioned, feel free to comment, but until next time, thanks for watching, and keep digging. Or if it's water, keep swimming. Bye.